What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, Division Rivals? This is Steven Hyder with Gate City Sports Channel. Sports Channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. All right, guys, today's topic. I'm sorry, guys. I've originally made this video as like one long foreign video about the defense, and then I realized that I needed to chunk this up into like more bite-sized content that's not like a 30-minute video for you guys. So, this is kind of part two. We're going to talk about the linebackers, guys. There's a lot to really discuss here, guys, because on one hand, I get the criticism, guys, that we just have not allocated as much resources as some people feel we should have. Okay, I think there's a lot of debates that can be had here because I think in terms of draft capital, we spent some picks there, guys. I mean, six round pick this year on Jacoby Stevens, 6 round pick last year with Sean Bradley, and then a compensatory 3rd round pick on Davion Taylor last year. So last 2 years, 3 picks. I mean, I'm not going to say we haven't attempted to bring guys in, but I get the criticism that like we're not really spending top 75 picks on the actual position because we don't see it as being a position that's worthy of that type of evaluation. And I get it. I mean, it's hard to say, guys. I think the criticism though lines up better when you talk about the money spent on the position, right? Because currently, and I do think there's some nuance to this point because I'm not too sure they have Jannard Avery counted in this figure they're giving, but currently we rank 32nd in the league with $6,487,615 spent on the position, which, I would say kind of flip that around because some teams have more linebackers than others, so total money is not always the best way of judging it. I would judge it more so by the average amount spent per player, which that comes out to be about 30th in the league, where we spent $926,802. So, yes, guys, I mean, certainly we're not spending the greatest amount of money on the position. I get it. And I definitely think that we can make a real good case that there's going to be some real changes that are going to come to the linebacker position with this new scheme we're playing, right? It's hard to say, guys, because we're going to play like a Zimmer type scheme. Zimmer was very dominant 43 over with, you would see some things like 43 over with a stacked box set. So when you get a 43 over stack, what you got, guys, is a very, very disciplined gap assignment here going on, like gap assigned kind of scheme to where if you're not in your gap, it's a big, big problem, guys. The problem being here is that, the league is changing. You're seeing teams that can make advantage of you. And when you play a 43 over stack, that's putting 7 defenders in the box because most 43s are really 6 defenders in the box. And that's because basically that Sam or that roving linebacker safety type has to, generally speaking, bounce outside of the box to like outside of where the tight end or slot receiver would be. So definitely there's going to be some schematic differences here. We definitely know that I'll say that both schemes did this. If you look at Eberfloss from Indianapolis' scheme, and if you looked at, Zimmer's scheme in Minnesota, both of them did believe in A-gap pressures. You'll see them kind of come up and either fake an A-gap pressure, or you'll see them do like Zimmer was really true to this guy. Zimmer, he's kind of the architect of this to where he would absolutely bring A-gap pressure, especially on 3rd down situations. I've even seen the play kind of play out to where you're in a wide 9 and then you're still bringing in A-gap pressure with your linebacker. So you're going to have to cover a lot of ground as a linebacker in this system. There's no doubt about it. Look, the guys that really interest me the most here are Eric Wilson, Alex Singleton, TJ Edwards, and Jacoby Stevens when we talk about kind of coming in as coverage linebackers and what they've done. I know TJ Edwards might be a weird one, but stick with me. So Eric Wilson, great coverage linebacker, guys. In terms of, I only bring up man snaps even I know we're going to be a dominant zone scheme because man's the best way of judging technique and how good a player is, all right? So Eric Wilson had 87 snaps on the season in man coverage where he was 41st in the league in terms of that. He had a 90.5 grading, which was definitely, if not the highest graded, it was definitely top 5. 8.6 average depth of target. So, it wasn't like he was just taking, the check down man. Gave up 6.2 yards per reception. TJ Edwards, man, we got to shout my guy out. He tied with Eric Wilson. 41st overall in the league with 87 coverage snaps out of man coverage, okay? An 86.6 grading. Really high, man. He was graded really higher than I thought. And here's the kicker. Average depth of target, I expected to be really short. I thought he would just be picking up running backs and stuff like that out of the backfield. No. He was covering downfield, guys. 9.3 average depth of target. Hey, my guy was running, man. And I will say that you could see some limitations. Although he only gave up one completion on 3 attempts on the year, that one completion was for about 12 yards, guys. So average, so your yards per reception being about 12 yards. But I got to give TJ Edwards credit because that is far greater or better than I thought. Like, that's why sometimes analytics are important to see, and then go back and kind of watch your film and see what you may have missed. Alex Singleton. Alex Singleton has all the athletic traits you want. And I'll give you a number that kind of gives you this, even though the grading isn't great. 24th overall in the league, and mind you, he did not start the season out as the starter. So 24th overall in the league with 116 coverage snaps out of man. It tells you that there was some trust here. Now, I will say he only graded out as a 61.4. It was clearly the lowest graded guy I'm going to bring up today. And his average depth of target was very short, guys, 2.5 yards. So that kind of tells me that he might have been covering, kind of playing more of the inside Mike Jack kind of linebacker in a 42. Kind of 42, that nickel kind of based package here. And the average, or the yards per reception, was about 6.6 yards. So, look, Alex Singleton, there's a lot of talent here. He gave up 8 receptions on 11 targets, but a lot of technique that still needs to develop here. Jacoby Stevenson. Jacoby Stevenson, the young man, coming out of LSU, right? This is going to be an interesting one to kind of break down, guys, because you're talking about a young man that was playing safety. So, the numbers are going to be a little weird here. But three receptions on 10 attempts. So, look, he played well. He was 14th in the league in terms of man coverage, 139. LSU was a fairly heavy man coverage system, so that's probably part of the reason why that occurred, guys. He had an NFL rating of an 81.3, so he's right there with the TJ Edwards and Eric Wilson's of being a very highly graded coverage guy. Average distance or average depth of target was like 13.4 yards, guys. It's a really good number. Obviously, being a safety, you expect it to be a little deeper down the field. And then your yards per reception, though, were 16.7. Once again, being a safety, obviously, if you get beat as a safety, it's going to be further down the field. I will say that I'm not going to bring up the other guys' zone coverage just because, I think there's a little complexity to some of the stories here. But Jacoby Stevenson, right? 141 snaps on the year out of zone coverage, guys. His his yards per reception was 21. So when he got beat, guys, it was pretty bad. And it was 5 of 5. So although he wasn't targeted very often, it was 141 coverage snaps. Every time he was targeted, there was a reception. His average depth of target, that was only 7.6 inside of his zone coverage. And I got to tell you that he graded out ridiculously well. 158.3 NFL grade. It's pretty much the highest grade you can get, guys. Like, they really thought this kid was a good coverage linebacker, roving safety type. So, excited to see what Jacoby Stevens can be as a coverage guy, right? Also as one of these blitzers, because let's be honest, the other element to playing this is going to be your pass rush ability, right? And I like TJ Edwards, and I think this might be where TJ Edwards might have some limitations. I don't know if I can say that I think that TJ Edwards is quite to Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton's area of being a very serviceable pass rush linebacker. Bringing that A-gap pressure, we'll have to see how that turns out with, a guy like TJ Edwards, but it's interesting, right? Just for the last couple of minutes, what I'll talk about is the back end of the roster, guys. Then you got guys like Sean Bradley and Davion Taylor to add in too. Last year's guys didn't play a lot. I see Sean Bradley being very similar to a TJ Edwards, just a little bit more athletic and a guy that can really play the run pretty well as well. I think if you're going to try to play your run and give your best run defense effort from your linebackers, then you're going to look TJ Edwards and Sean Bradley. I think they're clearly the two best. I think Alex Singleton is also a very big liability in run defense. And I think Eric Wilson is by far the biggest liability in run defense of our linebackers. Past those two guys, we're dealing with bottom end of the roster, guys. Joe Bachie, Rashad Smith, maybe practice squad guys, maybe continuously a developmental piece. Joe Bachie being a guy that I remember being a little bit more in terms of the inside. Rashad Smith is built more so for the outside. I don't think Rashad Smith is much of a stacked linebacker at 220 pounds. He would have to get a little bigger, in my opinion, to be able to play that stacked role. But look, guys, these are my thoughts. Interesting. We're going to have to see with the scheme. The scheme fit's going to matter a lot here, guys. It's going to be really difficult to judge this because we know we're going to get a lot of A-gap pressure here. We know we're going to get a lot of zone coverage snaps here. I expect to see some variance to things, guys. I expect us to be multiple, and depending on how we're multiple, will affect the way the linebackers, their responsibilities and their coverage. One thing I can tell you about Zimmer's defense in Minnesota was I went back and I was watching that Week 1 matchup against Green Bay. And number one, if they lose their discipline on basically on a lot of misdirection. They can get really beat bad by misdirection, that Line King. But also, they just don't run a lot of stunts and twists. There's just not a lot of deception on the line itself. Where I do think Indianapolis under Eberfloss, you saw a little bit more of the deception from the line. A lot more stunts, a lot more twists, a lot more things like that. So just kind of some final notes here and how that would affect your linebackers. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Don't forget, if you want to support the channel, links in the description below to buy me a cup of coffee. Also, don't forget to like and comment on the video. That's what, basically spikes the algorithm and gets it suggested to other people. Last but not least, guys, I'd love to add you to the community, but in order to do that, I need you to hit the subscribe button, guys. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Peace. I'm out of here.